Picture this. Everything is fine. Actually fine. Not just on paper, but in this specific moment. Nothing is wrong. You are sitting somewhere pleasant. Maybe outside. Maybe with someone you love. Maybe just alone with a cup of coffee and a few hours with no obligations. The sun is out. Nobody needs anything from you right now. This is the moment you told yourself you were working toward, and you cannot enjoy it. There is something underneath the quiet that will not let you settle. A pull toward your phone. A thought about what you should be doing instead. A low-grade anxiety that has no specific object, that just sits there, making the good moment feel slightly unreal, slightly borrowed, slightly like something you are going to have to pay back later. You are not depressed. You are not ungrateful. You know, logically, that this is a good moment, but knowing it and feeling it are two completely different things. And somewhere in the gap between those two things is a fear that most people carry for their entire lives without ever giving it a name. Carl Jung would give it a name, and what he had to say about it is one of the most uncomfortable and most quietly liberating things in the whole body of his work. He would say that what you are experiencing in that moment is not a minor personality quirk. It is not laziness or anxiety in the clinical sense, or ingratitude, or any of the other labels people reach for when they cannot settle into their own good moments. It is something more specific and more serious. It is the fear of genuine enjoyment. And it runs, in the Western world in particular, so deep and so wide that most people have never in their entire adult lives been fully present for a moment of their own happiness. This video is about why that happens and what Jung believed it costs. Let us start with where this fear comes from, because it did not arrive out of nowhere. It was built carefully over centuries by a culture that made a very specific deal with itself. Work is virtue. Rest is weakness. Pleasure is suspect. And joy that has not been earned is something to be ashamed of. Jung was not the first to notice this, but he was one of the first to describe its psychological consequences with clinical precision. He grew up in a deeply Protestant Swiss culture that carried this equation in its bones. Work was the evidence of good character. The capacity for sustained effort and delayed gratification was what separated the worthy from the unworthy. And leisure, genuine leisure, the kind where you are not recovering so that you can work again, but actually resting for its own sake, actually enjoying something because it is beautiful or pleasurable or delightful, that was always slightly morally suspect. This framework did not stay confined to Protestant Switzerland. It became, through a complicated historical process that Jung traced in his writing on the Western psyche, the operating system of modern civilization. The Industrial Revolution accelerated it. The digital economy perfected it. And the result is a culture full of people who are deeply uncomfortable being unproductive, who experience genuine rest as a form of mild guilt, who cannot sit in a beautiful moment without part of their mind cataloging what they should be doing instead. Jung looked at this and said, "This is not a virtue. This is a collective neurosis, and like all neuroses, it is not protecting the people who carry it. It is damaging them." The damage is subtle enough that most people never connect it to the cause. They notice the symptoms without tracing them back. The persistent, low-grade fatigue that does not respond to rest. The sense that even good things feel slightly flat. The inability to be moved by beauty the way they once were, or perhaps the way they imagine they should be. The feeling of going through motions in a life that, on paper, should feel meaningful. These are not signs of depression in the clinical sense, necessarily. They are signs of a psyche that has been running on the ego's fuel for so long that it has lost contact with the deeper source of energy that can only be accessed through genuine enjoyment, genuine rest, genuine play. Jung was very specific about this. He said that the psyche, like the body, needs more than one kind of nourishment. The ego feeds on achievement, on recognition, on the satisfaction of goals accomplished and tasks completed. That kind of nourishment is real and necessary. But the self feeds on something different, on beauty encountered without agenda, on laughter that arrives without being scheduled, on the experience of being so fully present in something that the monitoring, evaluating function of the conscious mind temporarily goes quiet, on joy. Not the joy of getting what you wanted, which is ego satisfaction, but the joy of being fully alive in what is actually here. And when that nourishment is consistently withheld, the self begins, very quietly, to starve. He made a distinction that is worth understanding carefully, because it changes the way you see the whole problem. He distinguished between the demands of the ego and the needs of the self. The ego, in the Jungian framework, is the center of conscious personality. It is the part of you that manages the practical business of life, that sets goals and pursues them, that maintains your identity in the world, and evaluates your performance against whatever standards the culture has installed. The ego is not the enemy. It is necessary, but it has a very limited range. It evaluates everything in terms of utility, productivity, achievement, status, and it has absolutely no framework for the experience of pure joy. The self is different. The self, as Jung used the term, is the deepest and most complete center of the psyche, the layer that connects the individual to something larger than the personal. And what the self needs, what it genuinely requires in order to remain vital and connected and functioning, is something the ego consistently undervalues and often actively suppresses: play, rest, genuine enjoyment, the experience of being fully present in something that has no purpose beyond its own beauty or pleasure or aliveness. When Jung said that the self needs joy, he did not mean this as a pleasant addition to an otherwise productive life. He meant it as a structural requirement, as necessary to psychological health as sleep is to physical health. And when joy is consistently suppressed, when the space for genuine enjoyment is systematically crowded out by the demands of utility and productivity, the psyche begins to show the strain. Not always in obvious ways, often in the subtle ways that are hardest to diagnose: a generalized flatness, a sense that life is being lived slightly at a remove, an inability to feel fully present even in the moments that should matter most. Now, here is where Jung's thinking becomes truly interesting and truly uncomfortable. Because the obvious response to everything I have just said is, fine, I will give myself more permission to enjoy things. I will take more breaks, spend more time doing things I love, practice gratitude for the good moments. And all of that is well and good, as far as it goes. But Jung would say it does not go far enough. Because the fear of enjoying your life is not just a habit that can be changed by giving yourself permission. It is rooted in something deeper. It is rooted in the shadow. In the Jungian framework, the shadow is everything the psyche has been unable to integrate, everything that was pushed down because it did not fit, because it was not acceptable, because it threatened the identity that was being carefully maintained. And one of the things that gets pushed into the shadow, in a culture that has systematically associated pleasure with weakness and rest with laziness, is the capacity for pure joy. Think about what that means concretely. If you grew up in an environment where enjoyment was always conditional, where you had to earn the right to relax, where the people around you were only comfortable when you were visibly working or achieving or producing something, then allowing yourself to feel genuine joy became associated, at a very deep level, with danger, with disapproval, with the threat of being seen as someone who does not take life seriously enough. And so, the joy went into the shadow. The capacity for genuine delight, for being swept up in something beautiful without immediately thinking about what it means or what it produces, for resting in a good moment without cataloging its implications. All of that got compressed down into the part of the psyche that is not allowed to be seen. And there it stayed, not gone, not dead, but expressed as shadow material always is, in distorted forms. Here is what the suppression of joy looks like when it comes back sideways. It looks like compulsive entertainment, the inability to be quiet, the constant need for stimulation that is not quite enjoyable, but serves to fill the space where genuine enjoyment would require you to actually be present. It looks like the habit of checking your phone in the middle of experiences that are supposed to be good, as if the moment is too much to stay in. It looks like the way some people will systematically sabotage a period of things going well, not consciously, not deliberately, but through a series of small decisions that introduce just enough difficulty to bring the situation back to something more familiar. That sabotage is particularly worth pausing on, because most people, when they think about self-sabotage, think about it in the context of failure. They think about the ways they undermine their own success, their own relationships, their own goals, and all of that is real. But Jung would point to a less recognized form of sabotage, the way people unconsciously destroy good moments, because the goodness of those moments has become more threatening than the difficulty they are used to. If joy has been in your shadow long enough, if you have spent enough years in a state of low-grade vigilance that never fully allows the good to land, then, when something genuinely good happens, when a moment of real beauty or real pleasure or real connection arrives, the unfamiliarity of it can feel almost dangerous. Not the goodness itself. The unfamiliarity, the territory of actually allowing it in fully, is unknown territory. And the psyche, as Jung observed many times, tends to retreat from unknown territory, even when that territory is good. So, the person cuts the good moments short, introduces a complication, picks a fight, finds a reason to worry, pulls out the phone, does something, anything, to bring the moment back to the familiar register of managed difficulty rather than unmanaged delight. Jung also noticed something specific about the timing of this sabotage. It rarely happens at the beginning of a good period. It tends to happen after enough time has passed that the good thing has started to feel real, has started to actually arrive, rather than being something anticipated from a distance. The relationship has been good for long enough that it actually matters. The project has gone well long enough that the possibility of genuine success has become visible. The vacation has been peaceful long enough that the mind is actually beginning to let go. And that is exactly when the disruption comes. Because the closer the good thing gets to being fully real, fully present, fully inhabited, the more threatening it becomes to the part of the psyche that learned to associate genuine enjoyment with danger. The distance was the safety. The approach was what needed to be interrupted. Understanding this pattern does not make it stop immediately, but it makes it visible. And making it visible is the first essential step, because you cannot change what you cannot see. The moment you notice yourself introducing a complication into a good period, the moment you catch yourself pulling back, just as something good is fully arriving, you have access to a choice you did not have when the pattern was completely unconscious. You can pause, you can name what is happening, and you can, sometimes, choose to stay in the good thing instead of retreating from it. This is the fear of enjoying your life in its most concrete form. Not a philosophical reluctance. A specific, active, usually unconscious intervention against your own happiness that happens in real time. In the actual moments when life is offering you something good. Jung had a response to all of this, and characteristically, his response was not a technique or a practice in the self-help sense. It was something he built with his own hands by the side of a lake. In 1922, Jung purchased a piece of land on the shore of Lake Zurich near the town of Bollingen. He was in his late 40s, at the height of his professional influence, the founder of a school of psychology with followers across Europe and beyond. And he began, with no particular plan, to build a tower out of stone. He did not hire architects. He did not outsource the labor. He carried stone. He mixed mortar. He built walls by hand, with the same deliberateness and the same attention that he brought to his clinical work. He worked on the tower for decades, adding to it, modifying it, extending it. He spent time there without electricity, without modern conveniences, cooking over an open fire, drawing water from the well, writing by hand at a simple table in the light from a narrow window. He called the tower his place of spiritual concentration. But what he meant by that was not solitude in the ascetic sense. It was play. He painted murals on the walls, not illustrations of psychological concepts, but images that arose from something deeper and less controlled than his professional intellect. He carved inscriptions in stone. He sat by the water for no purpose other than to sit there. He allowed himself, in that place, to do things that served no function in the economy of his professional life, things that produced nothing that could be measured or evaluated or presented to a committee. He said specifically that the Bollingen Tower was where he recovered the parts of himself that the professional world could not use, where he allowed himself to be someone other than the famous psychiatrist, the respected authority, the man with the reputation that needed to be maintained. At Bollingen, he was someone who carved images into stone, because the images wanted to be carved, who painted on walls because the walls asked to be painted, who sat in silence, not to become more productive afterward, but because silence was its own thing, its own presence, its own nourishment, that without those periods of genuine, purposeless play, his intellectual work would have lost its roots. It would have become, he believed, something technically competent, but psychologically hollow. The joy was not the reward he allowed himself after the real work was done. The joy was part of what made the real work possible. The capacity to be genuinely present in something beautiful or pleasurable or simply alive was, for Jung, not a luxury. It was the condition under which genuine creativity and genuine thinking could occur. He was also making a broader point about the relationship between the ego and the self. The ego operates in the world of purpose and utility. It builds careers, solves problems, maintains relationships, navigates social reality. All of that is necessary, but the self needs something different. It needs contact with what is alive, without being useful. It needs the experience of being fully present in something simply because that thing is worth being present in. It needs, in the most fundamental sense, joy. And when the ego systematically denies the self this experience in the name of productivity or responsibility or the various stories it tells itself about why now is never quite the right time to relax, the self begins to withdraw. The connection between the conscious personality and the deeper center of the psyche becomes thinner. The person becomes, over time, technically functional, but existentially hollow. They are doing all the things they are supposed to do. They just cannot quite feel why they are doing them. This is the psychological cost of the fear of enjoyment, not just the loss of pleasant experiences. The gradual disconnection from the part of yourself that knows what any of it is for. Now, here is a distinction that Jung made that is easy to miss, but that changes everything once you see it. He was not talking about pleasure in the ordinary consumer sense. He was not saying that you need more vacations, more entertainment, more of whatever the market sells you as relaxation. Those things can be fine, but they are often just another form of the ego's management, another way of filling time rather than being present in it. What he was talking about was genuine enjoyment, and genuine enjoyment has a very specific quality. It involves the complete presence of the self, not just the ego. It involves being fully in the experience rather than watching yourself have it. It involves a temporary suspension of the evaluating, cataloging, planning function of the conscious mind, and an opening into something that is simply alive. The difference is something you can feel. Think about the difference between watching a sunset while thinking about what you are going to make for dinner, and actually stopping, actually letting the colors be what they are, actually feeling the day ending in your body as well as seeing it with your eyes. The first is the ego processing an experience. The second is the self receiving one. Both happen in the same physical location, looking at the same sky, but they are not the same experience. And only one of them feeds what the psyche actually needs. Jung noticed that what made the difference was not time or circumstance, but attention. The capacity to be genuinely present, to let the experience actually arrive, rather than processing it from a safe distance, was what determined whether an experience fed the self or simply occupied the ego. And that capacity for genuine presence is exactly what the fear of enjoyment destroys, because presence requires vulnerability. If you are fully in the good moment, you are also fully exposed to the possibility that the good moment will end. You cannot manage that exposure from inside genuine presence. You can only experience it. And that experience, that opening to something good without already preparing for its loss, is precisely what the anxious, vigilant, not given orientation toward enjoyment makes impossible. There is a question that comes up whenever Jung's ideas about joy and play get taken seriously, and it is worth addressing directly. Is this just permission to be irresponsible? Is Jung saying that discipline and effort and the willingness to do hard things are somehow wrong? He was not saying that. He was saying something more precise and considerably more demanding. He was saying that the psyche is a system, and that systems require balance. The capacity for sustained effort, for discipline, for working through difficulty rather than avoiding it, is genuinely valuable. But it is not the only thing that is genuinely valuable. And a life organized entirely around effort and achievement, with no genuine space for enjoyment, for rest, for the kind of play that has no product, is not a balanced system. It is a system running too far in one direction, and systems that run too far in one direction tend, eventually, to correct in ways that are not under conscious control. Jung had a name for this corrective tendency. He borrowed it from the Greek philosopher Heraclitus and called it enantiodromia, the tendency of everything, when pushed too far in one direction, to eventually reverse into its opposite. The person who has never allowed themselves genuine rest will at some point find themselves unable to work, no matter how much they want to. The culture that has organized itself entirely around productivity will generate, as a kind of unconscious compensation, an epidemic of depression and burnout, and the particular hollow exhaustion of people who have been running on fumes for so long they have forgotten what it feels like to be genuinely full. We are living inside that epidemic right now. And the Jungian perspective on it is not that people need to work less, necessarily, or that ambition is the problem. The perspective is more specific, that the psyche requires genuine enjoyment as a structural component of a functioning life, and that the absence of that component creates exactly the symptoms that are now being experienced at a collective scale. The practical implication is not a grand lifestyle overhaul. It is something smaller and more immediate. It is the question of whether you can, in the actual texture of your actual days, find moments of genuine presence in something that is worth being present in, not because it advances any goal or justifies any claim on your time, but because it is alive, and you are alive, and being fully present in something alive is one of the fundamental things that the psyche requires to remain healthy. That might look like a walk without a podcast, a meal where you actually taste the food, a conversation where you let yourself be genuinely interested in the other person rather than monitoring how you are coming across. A piece of music you let actually land rather than using as background noise. A stretch of time in which you permit yourself to do something you love without running a parallel mental calculation about whether you have sufficiently earned it. These are small things, easy to take for granted. But the difference between a life that has enough of them and a life that does not is not a small difference. It is the difference between a life that is genuinely inhabited and a life that is only technically functional. I want to ask you something before this ends, and I would genuinely love to read your answer in the comments. When was the last time you were fully present in a good moment, not watching yourself have it, not already thinking about what comes next, not managing it from a slight distance, but actually in it, fully there, letting it be good without immediately looking for the catch? And if it has been a while, what do you think gets in the way? Take a moment with that question. Whatever your honest answer is, it tells you something important about where the work actually is. If this landed somewhere real for you, I hope you will subscribe to this channel. What we explore here is not surface-level self-help. It is Carl Jung's actual psychology, his real ideas, translated into language that anyone can absorb and apply to their actual life. And there is much more coming that I think will matter to you. For those of you who feel a deeper pull right now, not just intellectual resonance, but something that feels like a genuine longing to reconnect with who you are, beneath all the productivity and the worry and the earned not given relationship with your own joy, I want you to know about an ebook we created called Reconnecting with Your Divine Essence. It was made for people who are genuinely seeking more peace, more purpose, real inner healing, and a deeper connection with God beyond the noise of daily life. You will find it pinned in the first comment below this video. Jung built a stone tower by a lake and spent decades going back to it, not because he had earned it, not because he had finished everything else first, because the self required it. Because the part of him that was deeper and wiser than the professional mind knew that without those hours of genuine presence, of actual joy, of real contact with what was alive and beautiful and purposeless, everything else would lose its source. He was right, and you already know he was right. You have felt the difference between a life that is only managed and a life that is also, sometimes, genuinely inhabited. The fear of enjoying your life is real, but it is not the truth about you. It is a learned response to a culture that got the equation badly wrong. And like everything that was learned, it can be unlearned. Not all at once, not by grand resolution, but by doing, in the smallest moments of ordinary life, what Jung understood and what he kept going back to that stone tower to practice. Stop. Let it be good. Stay. That is the whole practice. And it is harder than it sounds, and more important than almost anything else.